I can't believe I'm in this situation and I don't know where to begin. My fiancée and I have been together for 5 years now. I'm in my early 40s and she's in her early 30s, and we are planning to get married this summer. Our solid and respectful friendship eventually blossomed. We have been happy throughout our time together. Our sex life is satisfying. We have no financial worries. We trust and respect each other. We communicate openly, and we share common interests. There is no mistrust or insecurity when it comes to pursuing our respective interests. One thing I must admit is that when we first met at work, she was engaged to someone else and I had never been unfaithful. I'm not that kind of person. I must admit that there were times when I felt that her flirting with me was inappropriate. Dependence. In September of this year, the co-mall in our area got under control, and we had a Saturday night for a small dinner party for 3 other couples. My fiancé enjoys hosting such events and insists on seating everyone at the table. During the meal, as I traveled between the kitchen and the dining area, while everyone was happily chatting and enjoying their drinks, I noticed a strange phenomenon. When I looked back at my fiancé and Bob, they seemed to be holding hands under the table. They don't do that anymore, but that moment was like finding out that there had been a break-in at your house. You come home and your eyes see chaos, but it takes a little time or even a few minutes for your brain to process it all. The feeling was very similar, and as a result I started to be more wary of her and less secure in our relationship. Turning the corner to November, I started to notice something. Some nights we were both tired and we liked to chat in front of the telly with our laptops each. However, from the start of November to now I've noticed that she's positioned herself subtly so I can't see her screen, and it's a subtle change, but I don't think it's my imagination. I considered inviting Bob and his wife to join us on our January holiday plans, but I don't like Bob and a lingering sense of unease made me hesitate. After reading many of the threads here, I realized that I was lucky in some ways as we were not married and had no children, and I lacked concrete evidence of anything happening, but my intuition was on high alert, though not yet at a critical level. However, I am beginning to feel ashamed of the impact this emerging obsession is having on my life, and here is where I need advice. Should I consider taking steps to monitor her? Before I clarify further, it's important to mention that I registered here about a month ago, and sometime before that I wrote my first post because it felt good to get my thoughts out at the time. Between then and now, a lot has changed between us, especially in terms of our sex life. We've become significantly less intimate, which in itself isn't a problem as relationships have their ups and downs. What stands out is an incident that happened about a week ago, which prompted me to come back here and work up the courage to post. I suddenly realized that my fiancé was treating our physical relationship differently than usual, not only that time, but maybe the 2 or 3 times before that as well. So without much thought I commented, "Hey, there's something different about the way you're getting intimate with me." She denied it at first, but the next day she said, "I think you're imagining things, and it's okay to change things up once in a while, don't you think?" What's frustrating is that if I hadn't noticed the possible hand-holding incident, I probably wouldn't have been bothered or skeptical about the subsequent clues. My instincts are rarely wrong, and I know where to put the voice-activated recorder. In addition, I earn twice as much as she does, and unfortunately, I was unable to reach her previous fiancé because he unfairly blamed me, not her, for their breakup, which is completely inaccurate. But you're not a trustworthy or reliable source. Thankfully we're renting at the moment, but we're planning to buy our own property before Christmas this year. Property in our city is ridiculously expensive, so we've been taking our time and we're living together now. A situation that could easily be terminated, and yes, sadly her phone has been glued to her body for months now, and to be honest I can't even remember the last time I'd seen her phone flying around, a detail that disturbed me deeply. As much as I was oblivious to what it might mean the weekend after Easter, I'd be traveling out of town, and it was a good opportunity to observe her movements in my absence. I've hired a private investigator and they start tomorrow. He now knows what I'm going through, and I'm flying to his city tomorrow night for a long weekend there. I've already informed my fiancée about the trip and her emotional reaction seems strange. In any case, if there's something missed, it may show up in this opportunity. In other words, if she cheats on me, this won't turn into a messy legal or financial situation. I'll quietly exit the relationship without causing a ruckus. The potential trauma of finding out that she cheated on me is already too much for me to handle, and I don't need to hear about her sweet-talking another man. I just met with a private investigator and she is indeed cheating on me with the guy I mentioned. I am shocked and devastated. He spent the night with her at our house on Friday night and didn't leave until the next morning on Saturday night. The private investigator provided time-stamped photographic evidence and I couldn't write any more. A good friend of mine was a great support when he found out about my situation, and when I told him the sad news, he was ready for it. He rang the doorbell and personally handed her pictures of my fiancé and Bob, which were time-stamped and so clear there was no doubt what had happened. The worst, however, was the first photo from Friday night when Bob arrived at my house, and because we live in a duplex she had to open the front door to let him in. The photo captured the sheer joy and excitement in her eyes. It was a moment I will never forget for the rest of my life. I told her that our relationship was over and that I didn't want to see her again, let alone think about getting married. I told her to move out of our place by Thursday afternoon, that I would take full financial responsibility, and asked her to put the engagement ring in a storage unit. I asked her to put the engagement ring in a prominent place less than 5 minutes before my friend handed the parcel over to my fiancé. I missed 2 phone calls from her, which were followed by a couple of stressful texts from her asking where I was, why I wasn't answering my phone, and why I wasn't at work. Before I started typing I got 2 very emotional voicemails from her. The first one was barely understandable as she was crying and screaming. The second one she admitted she couldn't deny the authenticity of the photos but claimed it was the first and only time they had ever done anything. I then lied, which is unusual for me, but I only replied with one thing: I saw you both holding hands under the table at the dinner party in September. I haven't received any replies yet, and I would like to say thank you for all the advice that has been given by people on here. Some have even suggested more drastic ways, such as telling her family about it, but that's not my style, and knowing myself very well, this situation would be also going to be hugely traumatic, and I have to stick to being me. Finally, I have to admit that despite my efforts to remain calm and dignified as I write this, I have a small thought that although Bob is younger than I am, between her age and mine, he is not as smart as I am, and is not as emotionally sensitive, which is what I thought she valued. He and his wife also have 2 young children, so that's what I can't understand. I feel like I've been struggling from one nightmare to the next, and at least now I can rest assured that I'm not losing my mind. Luckily, he's single, so I won't be inconveniencing my family. I also apologize for the fragmented nature of this letter, but it reflects my mental state, and as I expected, the last day and a half has been unbelievable. On Monday night my now ex-girlfriend found out I was staying here and came over and insisted that my friend let her in. My friend wouldn't let her in fact he had to physically prevent her from getting in, which led to a flurry of text messages and tearful voicemail messages where she expressed her desire for a second chance and claimed that last weekend was the only time they had a physical affair. She asked me not to tell anyone about it, such as my family or friends, because she believed we could work it out. However, I don't believe her for a second, and at this point, I feel completely emotionally drained and exhausted. My self-esteem has been dealt a severe blow. My emotional and mental image of my ex-girlfriend has been shattered. My emotional and mental image of my ex-girlfriend is in tatters. Any future with her is no longer possible, and trust has been irreparably damaged. Whilst I felt some relief that I had avoided spending my life with someone of such low character, I couldn't help but dwell on the physical side of things. My fiancée called me and was adamant that she would not move out under any circumstances, and my response was that she had to, or I would tell her family about the incriminating photos. On Thursday morning I received the sweetest text message from her apologizing for the previous night's argument. She promised to pack her bags and go to a friend's house for the weekend, pleading with me not to reveal anything to anyone. She insisted that it would ruin any chance of making up. I returned to my place on Thursday night, where I felt terrible. I've mentioned before how it feels like Breaking Bad, but with a twisted twist, where you know your house has been invaded, but your eyes can't provide concrete evidence. I found him easily on Facebook and sent him a message telling him I had something important to talk about and to please call me. The next day, when I drove more than 3 hours to his city, I finally had a chance to reflect on the incredible 100+ hours of my life. I mustered up the courage to stop at a picturesque rest stop and dialed the number of my other betrayed spouse, and to my surprise, she answered. What shocked me even more was that she said many people knew about my fiancé's infidelity to her ex-fiancé, but kept it from me. Finally, when I inquired about her plans, she revealed that he was willing to do whatever it took to mend the relationship with my negative fiancé, including counseling and complete transparency. I immediately contacted my wonderful private investigator to tell him of this development, and after the initial revelation of the affair, he suggested that I retain his services for a little while longer, as this is a common reaction for expos, and rather than interpreting this as taking pleasure from my pain, I found closure that it had nothing to do with him or his shortcomings in their relationship, and understood this thanks in part to this incredible community, which was also liberating. For me, I woke up to a vicious message on my private Facebook group, which consists of the groom's best man bridesmaids and our two main last names, simplifying a message posted by my willful fiancé stating that the wedding was unfortunately cancelled. In fact, I maintained complete silence and did not contact her or the group. Of course, my own family is aware of the situation, but I can't help but wonder why she changed her mind after texting me on Thursday morning expressing her desire to make up with me. She must really despise me, and if she can write a note like that with the clear knowledge that I will probably never speak to her again, it's both sickening and astonishing. More photos, more evidence. They were dining at a lovely restaurant at the spa resort, so it was easy to capture numerous photos of the much-loved couple sitting cuddled up together at the romantic getaway. I also inquired if my willful fiancé had ever mentioned to either of them that I was emotionally repulsive before the affair came to light. I thought that honest answers to these questions would reveal the truth beyond the shocking photographs. Her father has invited me for coffee this week, and he holds me in high regard, but I'm not sure I want to meet him, despite our closeness. In the end, as liberating as it was to be released from this tumultuous relationship that lasted 5 years, most of me was shattered, and I not only questioned my ability to observe and understand someone I had lived with for 5 years. I was very concerned that this experience would inevitably cause far-reaching damage to all of my future relationships. I will say that many people have inquired about me, but I haven't mentioned her yet, and she is a very beautiful woman whose looks are often compared to Blake Lively. Her ex-boyfriend mentioned on Friday night that part of the reason he kept taking her back was because he felt he would do anything to keep such a stunning woman. My attitude has definitely changed since I found out she cheated on me, but probably my biggest struggle right now is that I'm completely oblivious to what's going on because I'm convinced that this woman is as beautiful on the inside as she is on the surface. I know. I didn't hire a private investigator to gather more evidence, because the initial photos told me all I needed to know. And what's unbelievable to me is that after all that, she and he were able to continue to be open about their relationship for a few days, as if that one day didn't mean anything, and I was expecting that the private investigator would come up with nothing, and I wanted to give her a chance to come clean, in her own way, to her family, and to our wedding party, and to be honest, 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 and to be honest. Some of our discussions last week indicated that she might take that route. I threatened her that if you didn't tell the truth about the wedding cancellation, I would have to do it myself, and that this wasn't some kind of game. I expressed my concern to her about the hurt her husband continues to inflict on her and told her that meeting with me to look at photos from the second affair weekend might be surprisingly empowering in the long run. She disagreed. Since I posted the news of her second weekend of cheating on Facebook, she has been reaching out to me via text, phone, and even email. I believe it was the right decision to disclose the real reason for the cancellation to family and friends, which not only immediately refuted her false claims that I was an offensive person, but was also the least of the consequences of her not choosing the path of honesty in explaining why our relationship ended. I am ostensibly concerned that her sudden change of heart and desire for reconciliation may have been influenced by the community's reaction to her behavior. I worry that if there had been less condemnation from our group, if a few people had believed her lies, she might not have been so quick to beg my forgiveness. On Thursday, we spent the afternoon drinking at his golf club, and our conversation was long and intricate. Her father held a prominent position in the city and was a highly influential man, and I needed to be careful about what I said. He told me that my willful fiancé had never loved another man as deeply as she loved me, and that this was the first time anyone had held her responsible for her poor behavior. He argued that in this situation, I possessed great power and had the opportunity to act like a god in granting forgiveness and redemption to his daughter. He believed that my ability to forgive her and rebuild our relationship would not only prove my greatness, but also ensure her lifelong loyalty to me. I must admit that there was a certain allure to the idea of these words, but he made the mistake of mentioning that due to his influence and reputation, he could open doors for me in certain ways. I realized that his belief that his reputation and power could justify his misdeeds was hardly different from my willful fiancé's belief that her physical beauty could justify her numerous infidelities. I also pointed out that this would be a long process for her, as she had been in this behavior for many years and her damage was deepening. However, witnessing the second set of photographs was a painful experience for her, and by the end of the conversation she was having a hard time coming to terms with it, although she seemed to be making some progress in accepting the reality of her husband's behavior with one of her friends. Yesterday before dinner I received a long email from my willful fiancé's mother in which she expressed her sympathy for my feelings but then went on to tell me that her daughter had confessed to her all the details of her affair, that she was completely devastated, and that she was asking me to somehow take a moment to consider giving her another chance. I got home last night and my willful fiancé had indeed left a handwritten letter in my letterbox. At first I resisted the temptation to open it and even debated whether I should read it before I went to bed. Next, she mentioned that she and her Bob had decided to end their relationship forever. Then, in an almost clinical manner, she described me in detail as the best lover she had ever had and compared me to Bob and her previous partners. Bob called her to discuss his marital problems with his wife, who happened to be a friend of my willful fiancé. He confessed his deep infatuation with her, and she admitted to being ashamed of herself for being mesmerized by his words, but his main argument was that if she didn't feel even a fraction of what he felt for her, then she should forget that fraction before committing herself to marriage, and she claimed that she had firmly rejected his advances but that at the dinner party that night he played footsie with her under the table. Their first kiss took place in late October, incredibly while she was visiting her affair partner at the other betraying spouse's house for drinks and dinner. It was a weekend, I wasn't at home, and the other betraying spouse had gone to put the kids to bed after dinner. Most of their text messages in November and December centered around various scenarios he had devised for them to cheat on each other right under our noses. She vaguely describes when their cheating began and mentions that it started in early February. Her main arguments were as follows: she admitted that infidelity could run in her family or it could be in her genes, but claimed that she was perfectly willing to put it all behind her because I was the perfect man. Her twisted logic was that by having this affair she could cleanse herself of her demons and prepare herself for a committed life with me. She also stated that she would be living with her parents for an indefinite period of time. She stated that she intended to undergo therapy for the first time in her life. She promised to write me a letter every month to update me on her progress. She apologized for her previous comments about emotional severance, particularly for those that were public, but she did not completely retract her comments, rather she recalibrated them, suggesting that I had too high a moral standard for myself and others and that it was suffocating her. She suggested that I reflect on my own ideals and those of others. After reading all of this, I am too exhausted to express my feelings, and I don't even know what emotions I have left at this moment. The other spouse who betrayed me has reached out to me and asked to have coffee with me again this Thursday, as our previous coffee chat apparently helped with the community's analytical update on my capricious fiancé's letter, which gave me the wake-up call I needed to read her words with the insight necessary to see through all the nonsensical manipulations and evasions. Late Tuesday night, I sent an email to my capricious fiancé's father thanking him for his daughter's letter, but explaining that by not returning the ring she was disrespecting the boundaries I had set. He replied early the next morning, agreeing with me and suggesting we have lunch at a fancy restaurant. He went on to blame himself for his daughter's problems and mentioned that her mental health was in great jeopardy due to the fact that she had been denied what she wanted, and this was apparently the first time in her life that she had denied me. When I was 13, my mom instilled in me a powerful mantra: take responsibility for your actions. And in my younger years I was adept at finding ways to blame others or make other excuses for what I had done wrong. I gently pushed the copy of his daughter's letter across the table and said, "I'm sure you haven't read this letter." It was obvious he couldn't have read it in its entirety. He crumpled the letter up and pushed it back in front of me, and then in a sinister tone said, "If you can't accept the truth about your fiancé, then there is no hope for either of you to reconcile this unfortunate temporary situation. I didn't appreciate the way you spoke to me this afternoon. I honestly thought you were more genteel than that, but I put it down to the grief you are going through and you need to do the right thing." So I asked what that was and he just stared at me for about 5 seconds, said nothing, walked over to pay the bill at the front desk and left. Father-in-law, but I actually had a great coffee with my other betrayed spouse a couple of hours ago, which was not easy because I shared with her the contents of my willful fiancé's letter, which I was content not to show her, though I chose not to for a variety of reasons. She proceeded to tell me her husband Bob's version of events, which blew my mind. It was basically my willful fiancé's letter, but he put the blame on her. He made himself out to be the victim and she was the aggressively offensive one. After we shared our respective dating stories, the unthinkable happened and we started laughing nervously, which then turned into immature giggles and we ended up laughing our heads off. However, she also recognized that he had just as many problems as my willful fiancé and that she needed to find a way to get rid of him. So, as uplifting and empowering as the last 48 hours or so have been, as I sit here writing this, I suddenly find myself overwhelmed by sadness, loneliness, and a feeling that I'm not going to be able to breathe. I am in the process of drafting my final letter to her, politely asking her to leave my life forever. The following letter was sent yesterday afternoon, and I know some of you may disagree, especially those who question why I was writing, but I felt compelled to share what I wrote with this community, despite the expected negative reaction. Her name isn't Blake, but Blake, this letter is in 3 parts. This is my last correspondence with you and I ask that you do not contact me in any way from now on. If you or your family ignore this boundary, I may resort to legal action to protect myself. As a result of your choices and behavior in your letter, our relationship has been irreparably damaged. Your surroundings have supported and continue to support your behavior, so even though you've managed to work through a huge void within yourself, you need to be free of your family's influence. We escaped to your parents' cottage by the sea for an unforgettable long weekend, and one Friday afternoon while we were exploring some high rocks, you ventured close to the edge and risked falling into the sea. I understand now that everything about you and your intentions to ruin our relationship were condensed in that moment. I just hope you can muster the courage to change, but I won't be a part of the process. I had breakfast this morning with the bridesmaids from the wedding that will never take place. Apparently my ex-fiancée is devastated and has been in her room all night grieving. On a more worrying note, the bridesmaid also told me that when her father saw the note he became very angry and said straight away that he would pay for it, and frankly I was very worried that he might get back at me. It is also important to note that the bridesmaid is a true friend of my ex-fiancée and she has also been supportive throughout this whole process, and at the end of breakfast this morning I thanked her for keeping me up to date and asked her why she wanted to help. It was particularly interesting that the bridesmaids felt that my ex-fiancé was initially attracted to her as a friend for the same reasons she was attracted to me as a boyfriend. We both have qualities of stability, reliability and integrity that my ex-fiancé seemed to lack. The bridesmaid was not surprised that my ex-fiancé cheated on her because she thought she had a history of cheating on her, although she thought I might be an exception. She continues to be friends with my ex-fiancé but also sympathizes with me and thinks I did the right thing. I am concerned that another betrayed spouse's anger towards my ex-fiancé may be negatively affected by Bob, and that she may be inclined to blame Bob exclusively, rather than the betrayed spouse. I feel that since you are all gently supporting me, I should do the same with the other betrayed spouse, but I believe I can guide her, but not insist on it, any more than you can lead a horse to water. Speaking for myself, I am going through emotional ups and downs and I don't want my ex-fiancé to come back to me in any way. That's who I am right now, but I am struggling with the idea of intimacy in a future relationship right now, and I am very worried that I will be lacking in confidence in the process, which has never been an issue before. I apologize for the disorganized nature of this post. It's more of a heartfelt outpouring after an important meeting with someone who is deeply involved on both sides. This morning, the police called me to tell me that my ex-fiancé, who was previously unfaithful to me, had made false accusations against me. My solicitor is aware of my use of this forum, and whilst he acknowledges that it has had a positive impact on my mental health, he has advised me not to discuss any further details until this matter has been resolved, and, needless to say, the accusation is completely untrue and I am deeply disturbed. During that week and a half I continued to go to work as it helped me to keep quiet. When I received the good news, it took me a few days to properly process everything. My ex-fiancée suddenly appeared through the side door and it was surreal to see her. Honestly, she looked like a different person, or I couldn't recognize her. It was a strange feeling but reassuring. Firstly, her cheating was inevitable and how it shattered our lives. Secondly, she was dressed provocatively as if she was trying to seduce me, and she acted very flirtatious as if we were on our second or third date and would be sleeping together soon. Thirdly, she invaded my privacy. Finally, she said, without explicitly stating it, that her father coerced her into filing charges. However, when she realized the consequences for me, she changed her mind and said that she had made the allegations in a state of extreme mental distress, almost in a state of ecstasy, and thanks to me I managed to keep a great deal of composure and did a couple of things. I conveyed to her the immense amount of hurt and damage that she had done to me, and made it clear that I would never truly forgive her. I mentioned the conversation I had with her ex-partner, which made her very angry, but to her credit she managed to keep her anger in check and took the opportunity to admit that she was deeply disturbed. I just shook my head helplessly and watched her leave. I had a truly relaxing weekend, and ultimately, my encounter with her was a relief on so many levels. The next day, she sent me another, more revealing photo with a note saying, "I know you wouldn't dislike these so much if you didn't tell me to stop." Later that evening, she wrote back to apologize and said she recognized she needed help and wouldn't be contacting me again. It was only 5 days later, but the other betrayed spouse contacted me on Friday night to apologize for her silence, and we had a nice exchange there and throughout Saturday. I wondered if it was odd that my ex-fiancée had photos and videos of me, and I wondered if it was odd that I wonder if it's weird that my ex-fiancée has photos and videos of me. I wondered if it was strange that my ex-fiancée's photos and videos had aroused my desires, which had almost disappeared during this ordeal, so the strange combination of feeling like my ex had literally left my life and admiring those photos had awakened some dormant desires in me. I could have slept with another spouse who cheated on me, but we both realized at the same time that it could easily lead to intimacy, so we stopped. I knew it wasn't a good situation for the obvious reasons that 1. I hadn't been intimate with her in a long time and I wasn't ready to start dating, so this seemed convenient. 2. The revenge mentality. And 3. The fact that I felt like I was one of the few healthy supporters she had. I also realized that if I get close to her, it increases the chances of my ex-fiancée coming back to me. However, I acknowledge that I am hurt, as evidenced by my decision to kiss another betrayed spouse, and I will continue to seek counseling. Lastly, it's comforting to check in here from time to time and see the support and concern I get from everyone. This place has been very good to me. It's like a much-needed reality check for those trying to deal with the aftermath of a betrayal. Looking at what I did after my ex-fiancée unexpectedly showed up at my house, it's clear that her visit threw me off a bit. But he was relieved that I didn't take any action on those photos and videos, like reposting or downloading them. An important point to note is that some of my online friends suggested that I delete all of those emails from her, but my attorney vehemently disagreed. My brother, who is a wonderful man, will be arriving on Thursday and will be staying with me for the next 7 to 10 days, which will be the perfect opportunity for us to spend some quality time together, especially since he has a very busy life as a husband and father. In addition, I just got off the phone with another betrayed spouse, and without any prompting on my part, she admitted that our brief kiss was inappropriate and more out of a desire for revenge. I gently but firmly explained that I couldn't play that role while she was upset because her previous experience with therapy hadn't gone well and because she thought I was a safe person. I was confident that she would respect my request that we would have no further contact over the next few months, as she recognized that I was in a dangerous legal situation and did not want to jeopardize safety. He is willing to provide a statement on this, which my attorney believes is a valuable business card to keep in our pockets and could potentially constitute trespassing if needed. I feel like a victim throughout this whole process, and my ultimate goal is not necessarily justice or compensation, but simply for this father and daughter to leave me in peace. Finally, looking back over the last 7 days or so, I realize the immense hurt that all of this has caused me. I know it would be unfair and selfish to let her carry my emotional baggage while my hurt is still fresh. However, I do feel very alone, and I am hoping that my brother's visit will help alleviate some of that loneliness.